Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the March edition of the Superintendent Webcast. We have a busy agenda for you today. Tony will put that up and I'll walk you through it.
Okay.
Okay, we've got several KDE updates that Tony will go over with you. Mickey's going to be on to talk about the survey that you received from the LRC yesterday and some background information on that. We have Robin and Cheyan with us to talk about legislative update along with Brian Perry, our Director of Governmental Relations. John will give an update on the Educators Rising State Conference and what all happened there. We were really excited about that. And then we'll close with the Q&A session. So Tony, let me hand things over to you for KDE updates.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Just a couple of things. As we mentioned to you at the last webcast, we have updated our competitive grants from KDE opportunities on our website. We redesigned this earlier this year to be a little bit more user-friendly. And the improvements were implemented after discussions with many of you all. So just wanted to update you on some opportunities that we have right now. So these are competitive grants from KDE. There is a Reading Diagnostic and Intervention Fund, RDIF. Grant applications are due on the 25th of April. And then we also have a Strong Connections Grant opportunity, and those applications are due on the 15th. As always, we'll include this in the PowerPoint that you receive, and if you have any questions, there'll be contact information on that as well. Wanted to just give a shout out to everyone who shared the word of our open seats on the Commissioner's Student Advisory Council and the open student and teacher ex officio members on the Kentucky Board of Education. For the Kentucky Board of Education seat, we have 7 students that are being considered in that process, and we have 8 teachers. And so this will be for the next academic year. So we appreciate those of you in those congressional districts that went ahead and nominated, and we're excited to see how that will roll out. And then we also had 103 students from 41 school districts who applied to become part of our Commissioner's Student Advisory Council. Really excited to see the different districts and students who are interested in that. And also the age range. We have a lot of sophomores and juniors as well. So thank you to everyone for that. We were in Johnson County last week to celebrate the groundbreaking on their new high school and CTE center. You'll see there's some students with shovels, and this project is a $126 million high school and integrated CTC center. And it'll include a new studio for media arts, state-of-the-art facilities for engineering and technology students, and resources for instruction and collaboration outside the classroom setting. Thank you to Superintendent Cochran for inviting us out, and we were excited to share the news with everyone. Also wanted to let you know that 2 cooperatives have received more than $18 million in federal funding for student mental health. This was announced on February 21st by Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman. Department of Education selected these 2 educational cooperatives that had applied for funding. And so you'll see there, Northern Kentucky received $13.2 million, and the Ohio Valley Educational Cooperative received about $5.2. Last month, we also celebrated CTE month, and we had a lot of students at the Capitol and also at KSBA that presented project-based learning and things that they're working on with their CTE programs. And just to give you a quick number, just to let you know how many students this impacts, our data showed that in the 21-22 school year, roughly 71% of our high school students participated in CTE programs. So we know this is a great opportunity for our students, and really excited that they were able to showcase their skills. KDE is also, and you'll learn a little bit more about the legislative session. We have an update on that coming up soon, but wanted to give you an update on our literacy programs and initiatives to the legislative committee. This is to help with our Read to Succeed fund and to help accelerate student progress towards reading proficiency. So really excited about the movement of these initiatives. Our Kentucky Teachers Advisory Council just met within the last 2 weeks. Our 2023 Kentucky Teacher of the Year joined, was talking about advocacy efforts related to teacher retention. As many of you all know, Mandy is a sixth grade English arts teacher from Crittenden County, and she's currently on sabbatical at KDE as part of her Teacher of the Year achievement. And she's using part of her platform to encourage teachers to shine a light on why they choose to stay in the classroom. We recently, just within the last couple of days, posted her column. It's entitled "I Choose to Stay," and I encourage you to check it out and share it amongst your teaching community and also just your regular community. It's a really powerful column. Last week, our Kentucky School for the Deaf hosted a warm-up for the Regional Academic Bowl. We have students from all across the state and many of your districts that are students and receive services from KSD. And this took place last weekend. Over the course of a few days, we had several schools from across the country, and the national winners will compete in later this month or later in April. And I will kick it off to Mickey Ray for a little update on the survey that you all learned about in the Monday message and that has been emailed out. Mickey.
Thank you, Tony. Well, good afternoon, superintendents. The message that I'll be sharing today was actually shared with you in writing via the Commissioner's Monday messages, as Tony shared. But I wanted to make sure that you understood where the survey was coming from and who was collecting the information. So there is a Legislative Oversight and Investigations Committee via the Kentucky General Assembly. And after the passage of Senate Bill 1, 2022, which shifted the responsibilities for curriculum and the selection of instructional resources to the superintendent, this committee were directed to study K through 12 textbooks and instructional materials. So later this week, and you may have already received it today, the LRC knew that we would be delivering this information to you as of yesterday, but there is a survey that is regarding these very issues. So you will be reporting information to legislators on how your school district selects textbooks, instructional materials, the policies that have potentially changed or taken shape since the passage of Senate Bill 1, 2022. So we just wanted you to know that is coming, that again, that is reported to LRC. That's not data that the KDE is collecting. And if you have any questions about that, you could reach out to me at any time. I believe my email address, you know that as needed, and so we can make sure that those questions are answered if you have any sort of concerns. I do believe it is pretty benign in terms of the contents of that survey, but wanted to make sure that you knew that that would be coming if you are not already familiar. So thank you, Dr. Glass.
Thanks, Mickey. Now, staying on that legislative note, we'll turn things over to Robin and Jay and Brian to give an update on where things are with the legislature. I guess, Brian, we can start with you and you can give a rundown. And then I think we have Shay and Robin on to go into some more detail on some of the financial questions that we were hoping to see some progress on.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll just give a brief update. Things are moving quickly. This week, as you've probably been following along this morning, lots happening. Lots of bills are starting to move. I tried to make a little list to go through, but it ended up being quite long. Even though they promised us this was going to be a real short session and just do cleanup language, we've got a long list of bills that are likely to go to the governor for action, probably by the end of the week. So just real briefly, the calendar for the rest of the session. We'll be in session today, obviously, tomorrow and Thursday, at which point they will take a break for the veto period, so the governor can take action on all the bills that have reached him thus far. Just a quick recap there. He can sign into law. He can allow to become law without his signature, or he can veto. I believe House Bill 448, which Robin will talk about later, is the only bill that he'll have line item veto power in this session. It's usually reserved for the budget, and so that's a revenue bill, so he'll be able to line item stuff in there if he wants to. When they come back on the 29th and 30th, I believe, the last 2 days of the session, they will consider veto overrides. Simple majority vote in each chamber overrides the veto. So with their supermajorities, that's not much of a problem. They can send bills to the governor those last 2 days for action. However, they're not veto proof. because they'll be out of legislative days at that point. But I do think that they will, because they're moving so much legislation, I do think there's a good chance that some of the non-controversial bills don't go to the governor for action until late this month on those last 2 days. So don't be surprised or don't panic if you see a bill kind of stall this week, especially if it's not controversial. I think that there's a good chance it'll still go. It'll just happen those last 2 days of the session. Okay, deep breath. Let's go through a couple of the bills. The list is pretty long, so I'm not going to go through everything, but I did want to hit a couple of highlights and stuff that's happening. So probably most consequentially this morning, you saw House Bill 470 get a hearing in the committee, but it also got heavily amended. So Senate Bill 150 is now a part of House Bill 470. Senate Bill 150 was the parental rights bill that I think a lot of us thought would be the vehicle that moved forward, but that's now intertwined with 470. They also put in a couple of bathroom provisions in the committee sub for that bill, so please pay attention to what's happening with that bill. One that may have confused some folks, Senate Bill 156. This was the bill that would create a statewide research center. Our Office of Teaching and Learning was very excited about this bill, is very excited about this bill. It got out of committee yesterday, and then late last night, an amendment popped up to it because it was reassigned back to Education Committee today. The amendment would have had an audit done of Jefferson County Public Schools with a potential recommendation of breaking that district into multiple districts. That committee failed this morning that amendment failed in committee this morning, and they voted a clean version of 156 back out of the committee. So for now, that bill is clean and is waiting a vote on the floor. Meanwhile, the amendment is dead for now, but I won't be surprised if we see that amendment pop back up somewhere else, potentially as a floor amendment. If we do, we may see them take out the recommended breaking up of the district and just have a more of a clean audit amendment. So we'll watch that one and see what happens there. Some other bills of note, House Bill 13 is a fairly straightforward bill. It extends the time between physical exam for bus drivers from 12 to 24 months. I believe the 24 months comes from the federal provisions. Just noting that that bill has cleared both chambers. It, however, picked up a sub in the Senate, so it is now back in the House for them to concur or not concur with that substitute. If they concur, it'll go to the governor for action. If they do not, they'll go to a conference committee where they can try to hammer out a final version. Senate Bill or House Bill 32, which would allow for the hiring of classified staff without a high school diploma, as long as there was a plan in place to allow them to get that at no cost, is on consent in the Senate. So that one is likely to move forward pretty quickly. Lots of stuff in the opposite chamber waiting on votes. One that I think is dead for this session is the companion bills, House Bill 50, Senate Bill 50. Those are the bills that, among other things, would have made local school board races partisan. So there was lots of pushback against this in the community. I think those have stalled out. House Bill 50 was on committee agenda, I guess, last week, and it got pulled that morning of, and I believe the chairman said that they just didn't have votes for it. So it appears that those are dead for now. I won't be surprised if we see those reappear next session, however. So just keep tabs on that. I also note on that I noticed that Indiana also did not move a bill forward that would have done the same thing in their state. So always kind of good to keep track of what's happening in neighboring states as well. So another bill that moved this morning for the first time, and I think kind of unexpectedly, was House Bill 174. This would put a constitutional amendment on the ballot in 2024, so a year from now, that would allow for public monies to flow to non-common schools. So it's unclear if it would be private schools, some sort of voucher program, charter schools, or some combination of all of those. But we'll certainly be watching that as well. And The bill that may not go much further, unfortunately, is Chair Tipton's House Bill 319. This is the omnibus related to teacher recruitment and retention. It's out of the House, but has not picked up an committee assignment in the Senate yet. So they can still do this at the end of the session. I don't think it's likely to move this week at all, but hopefully we will see that one move late in the session. Another one that I was kind of excited to see get a couple of readings yesterday was House Bill 196. This would create the Safe Kentucky app. It's based on the Safe Utah app. It's related to mental health of students and would allow for them to access mental health services via the app, I believe 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So a very exciting bill that hopefully we'll see move. Again, that's one that I think could very well go to the governor for action late in the session, because I don't foresee that one getting a veto. A couple other bills that we're moving this morning. House Bill 538 appears to be the student discipline bill that will go to the governor for action. House Bill 547 is related to First Amendment rights. That's going to go to the governor for action at some point soon. I think that's probably it for now. There's a lot of other stuff moving, but I don't want to overwhelm folks and cut into everybody else's time here. So with that, I will turn it over to Robin to go over some more stuff in depth.
Thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. As you can see from Brian's presentation, things are moving kind of fast and furious right now. I've been asked to kind of go over two bills that may be of interest to you. These bills potentially impact your existing revenues or additional funding for your local school districts. And these are House Bill 5 and a companion bill to that of House Bill 447, and that's relating to a tax exemption. And then House Bill 448, which relates to additional financial assistance for school districts. House Bill 5 is entitled An Act Related to Distilled Spirits, and many of you may have heard of this as the Bourbon Barrel Tax Bill. The original bill as filed would amend KRS 132-140 to allow an exemption of the state or local property tax on distilled spirits stored or aging in barrels located in a bonded warehouse or premises. The exemption as set forth in the bill would be on a graduated schedule and would start on January 1st of 2026 at a 3% exemption. And then it would increase over time to 100% of the tax exempted by January 1st of 2039. The fiscal note, which is a document prepared by LRC staff that tries to estimate the amount of the fiscal impact on bills such as this, estimated the fiscal impact of a loss of revenue of $249 million. That is statewide, of which $232 million of that would be in local revenue loss. The fiscal note did not quantify the local school district loss. The bill actually passed out of the House yesterday with a House committee sub. It passed out 59-40. And it did add a notable provision for local school districts. This provision related to the tax exemption and indicated that it should not be included in the calculation of the local effort required for SEEK or for the tax rate setting process in KRS Chapter 160. So a good House committee substitute, better than the original bill, but still not as good as if they just weren't doing anything with the tax at all. Also occurring yesterday, there was what we would say is a companion bill that was moving at the same time, House Committee sub to House Bill 447. 447 started out as an act related to appropriations, and originally it didn't have any language in there about school districts or tax exemptions or revenue. But the House Committee sub to this bill added language to it and basically established a floor guarantee beginning July 1st of 2025 and every fiscal year thereafter, so that school districts would receive the same amount of ad valorem tax revenues from that distilled spirit stored or aging in barrels. So it sort of uses the same language of House Bill 5. and would put in a floor guarantee as of what was received in fiscal year 22-23. So it basically attempts to put in sort of a hold harmless provision. It goes further to say that if school board revenues fail to meet that floor guarantee, funds would be appropriated to your school district to get you up to the floor guarantee, and that would come from the Budget Reserve Trust Fund. The LRC fiscal note on this one indicates that the fiscal impact is indeterminable, but did put an estimate at $21.3 million each year based upon your current, in the aggregate, current local district tax rates. So this bill will now go on to the Senate. The other bill that may be of interest to you is House Bill 448, and this one is really doing a roller coaster ride, I guess I would say. 448 starts out as an act relating to government agencies, making an appropriation therefore, and declaring an emergency. Last week, we had sort of this brief glimmer of hope, I think, when we saw a proposed committee sub to the original bill, which was looking like it was going to try to help us address financial assistance to growth districts in the amount of about $10 million, and then would have provided that the remaining excess for this fiscal year be distributed to local school districts through the pupil transportation formula. So as of March 1st, we have determined that we have $56 million in excess for SEEK for this year. And so it would have taken that approximately $10 million off the top for growth and then allowed the remaining dollars to be distributed to local school districts through the pupil transportation formula. Unfortunately, that proposed committee substitute did not pass. Instead, 448 passed out of the House with another sub, and it did not include any additional financial relief for local school districts related to the loss of ADA or growth. In the Senate, a Senate committee sub was added, which passed out favorably yesterday. And it includes and talks about SEEK lapse to be directed in this manner. Any unexpected SEEK funds in fiscal year 22-23 shall lapse to the general fund. This is current budget bill language. So it basically says for 22-23, lapse to the general fund. And then goes further to say, it is the intent of the 23 General Assembly to provide SEEK funds in fiscal year 24-25 from any unexpended SEEK funds. So if we have SEEK excess in 23-24, they are now directing that SEEK excess will go first to help growth districts that experience growth in 22-23, and then the balance of any excess SEEK funds left from that to the Budget Reserve Trust Fund. So really, for those growth districts, it would have you receiving, if this passed and if it stayed in place, you wouldn't receive the benefit of that additional growth money until 24-25. House Bill 448 has been returned to the House and assigned to rules, at least when I prepared my talking points. So I don't know if additional movement has happened. We have provided several options for the Kentucky General Assembly to consider to assist both our districts that have had loss in ADA as well as districts that have had growth in ADA. And we've also been asked to provide additional scenarios, run different formulas, and we continue to do that. We have shared with the General Assembly throughout that it's really important that our districts know what additional assistance they may have as soon as possible. And to do that this session, because we know you're working on your budgets right now and you need to know if you're going to have any additional funds as we start the next school year. Because at this point in time, we really don't know how that's going to shake out. We do encourage you to continue to budget and prepare as if no additional funds will be coming your way. That way, if it does work out and additional funds do come your way, you'll be able to basically just add that to your existing budget. It's never over until it's over. And as Brian said, there's still days left. We will continue to provide updates through the Commissioner's Monday message And as always, please don't hesitate to reach out to us if Che and I can help you, or if Brian can help you as you're tracking legislation this session. I do have Che on. He's on there to help me if we get any questions, but we're happy to answer any questions, and you can put those in the Google form. I think that's all we have as far as additional updates for House Bill 5 and House Bill 448. So back to you, Commissioner.
Okay, thanks, Robin. Che, anything that you wanted to add that Robin didn't touch on?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Robin, thanks, Che, and thanks, Brian, for that update. Now we've got John on to give us an update on the Educators Rising Conference and all the great things that happened there. John, are you on?
I am here. Good afternoon, Dr. Glass, and good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for inviting me to speak today and give a brief wrap up of the 2023 Educators Rising Kentucky State Conference and Competitions. Now, as many of you know, Educators Rising is the career and technical student organization that encourages and supports high school students interested in exploring and pursuing careers in the field of education. And operating under the umbrella of the Go Teach KY initiative, Educators Rising is inspiring students to consider the field of education as a viable career path. Now, through this effort, we are recruiting the next generation of Kentucky educators to help remedy the critical teacher shortage that's currently affecting every state in the country. Now, research shows that the most important factor contributing to student achievement is effective teachers, and it's the mission of the Office of Educator Licensure and Effectiveness and the Division of Educator Recruitment and Development to ensure that all students across the Commonwealth have equitable access to effective teachers, and all of that starts with early recruitment and development. So last year, at the end of our first live conference since coming out of the COVID pandemic, I was given a challenge by our Associate Commissioner, Dr. Byron Darnell, and that was to double the size of our conference. And I am pleased to report that we achieved that goal. Now, last year we had a student attendance of around 280, and this year we had 576 students attend the conference. And not only that, but we tripled the size of students involved in competition events, having 343 student competitors. So the competition events that allow students to display skills learned in the classroom are areas such as lesson planning and development, public speaking, creating and curating artifacts used in the classroom, and developing job interview skills through resume and cover letter development and mock interviews. Now, students can also explore different careers in the field of education, such as teaching, administration, and support service careers through research and interviewing people currently employed in those areas. Now, a new competition that we offered this year was Children's Literature K-3 in Spanish. And the students compose and present a children's book in Spanish, and then they debrief with the judges. We had 12 entries in this category, and one of my judges remarked that several of the competitors said that for the first time, they felt that their voice was heard and that they were welcomed and encouraged as potential educators. So the conference also allows students to hear from leaders in the field. And this year's opening keynote address was offered by Dr. Amber Sargent, Kentucky High School Teacher of the Year, who spoke to the students on the rewards of teaching despite the many challenges that teachers face today. She also shared personal stories of the impact one teacher can have on a student and encouraged our aspiring educators to cherish those moments throughout the career. We also heard from Dr. Glass, whose presence is a must at our conference. He shared about the importance of the development of our education workforce, the United We Learn campaign, and the importance of creating deep and meaningful learning experiences for our students. Another Educators Rising favorite was Dr. Roger Cleveland from Eastern Kentucky University, and he offered a presentation that focused on working effectively with diverse learners. Always highly interactive, Dr. Cleveland engaged our students in a series of exercises that demonstrated the importance of understanding different learners, their culture, and their diverse learning styles. Now, the conference also took the opportunity to raise student voice in our organization. I always tell my teacher leaders that if you're not developing leadership within your students and chapters, you are missing a significant opportunity to allow your students to develop those skills they will need in the classroom, such as problem solving, conflict resolution, interpersonal leadership, and other durable skills. Now, with that focus in mind, this year we introduced our inaugural state officer team, and they took the reins of this conference. Our state president, Ms. Audrey Gilbert, led our leadership team in much of the planning and execution of this conference. They served as masters of ceremony, were ambassadors to Educators Rising students, and engaged students in numerous activities and facilitated networking opportunities. We also had a collegiate panel of current education majors engaged in a panel discussion moderated by Dr. Elizabeth Dinkins, Dean of the School of Education at Bellarmine University. The topic was on the experience of majoring in education, the challenges that students face, and how to succeed as an education major. Now, the questions were composed by our state officers, and the discussion was highly interactive, engaged students who participated. And finally, a high water mark of the day was unquestionably our closing keynote speakers. First was Hannah Edlin, Miss Kentucky 2022, whose presentation was entitled Rise Up, It's Time to Be an Educator. Now, she focused her talk on 4 aspects of teaching, but I was struck by her comments on the service aspects of teaching and how educators can be great servant leaders, and how this connected to the United We Learn campaign as we work to collaborate with our communities. Finally, our Lieutenant Governor, Jacqueline Coleman, offered closing thoughts for the conference and shared her experiences as a teacher and coach, and offered words of encouragement to our students. Now, she assured us that the Bashir Coleman administration is an education-first administration, and her presence at this conference cemented that commitment in the minds of all who heard her speak. Lieutenant Governor Coleman and Ms. Edlin also stayed for our awards ceremony and personally congratulated each of our contest winners. So this was our biggest conference ever, and this effort was truly a magnum opus for our 5-person division, but by no means was this our effort alone. We had the support of many offices at KDE who sent judges and ambassadors to help us execute this conference. We also had educators from around the Commonwealth who gave of their time and talents to help judge our competitions, a total of 118 people in all. Our gracious hosts at Bellarmine University, and most importantly, are our teacher leaders who sponsor these chapters, doing the boots on the ground work, encouraging students to become teachers. So this is truly an all hands on deck effort. And in the coming months, we will honor our seniors who have committed to enroll in one of the Commonwealth's educator preparation programs with Educators Rising National Signing Day. And many will travel to Orlando at the end of June to compete at the national conference. So seeing all this activity, I'm reminded of what Dr. Dinkins said to our Assembly of Future Educators. When I look out at this gathering of students committed to education as a career, I see hope. So thank you for allowing me to share about this vital and exciting work. And I know a number of you also set judges and teachers to help us with this conference from various districts. So I thank you all. Are there any questions?
I don't see that any have come in related to Educators Rising. Thank you, John. It was a great event. I enjoyed being part of it as always, and just delighted to see the growth and expansion that the conference has taken on and the whole program has taken on. It really is a bright spot in our educator workforce pipeline in the state. So kudos to you and the rest of the team, and keep going.
Thank you, Dr. Glass, and thank you again for having me today.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're to the point of questions, and we only have one that's come in. And Tony, I see that you've come on. Do you want to read that question? It looks like this is probably.
Yeah, I just said. Yeah, it looks like it's a Robin question. So the question is pertaining to, if I can get it back over to my screen, related to House Bill 448 Senate sub. Any insights provided as to why growth districts might not receive funding until 24-25 when the growth has happened now?
I really don't have, I know Tony said that's a question for Robin, but actually that's a question for the General Assembly. I don't really have any insight. We have continued to say, and an option as presented from the Department of Education was to provide funding really in this fiscal year to help you all kind of catch up as you start into the next school year. So I'm hesitant. I really don't know. Have the insight as to why the General Assembly is choosing to kind of push that off to 24-25.
Yeah, so we wish we had better answers to these, but the decisions are moving or not moving, independent of our opinions or thoughts on things, and possibly independent of yours as well. I think probably the best course of action is to reach out to your legislator, superintendents, and let them know how these actions or lack of actions when it comes to school funding is going to impact your district, your community, your schools in the current year, and how it will impact it next year as well. So that's probably your best bet is to just make it really clear the impact that of these decisions or lack of decisions are going to have on you. Anything else, Robin and Che? Okay, that was the only question that we had that came in. Thanks everyone for tuning in to our superintendent webcast this month. I think we'll close up. Tony, when's our next webcast? April 18th?
Yeah. So just, April 18th, just a programming note, due to spring breaks and lots of conflicts in the beginning of April, we will have our next superintendent webcast on Tuesday, April 18th. That is the third Tuesday of the month for those keeping score at home. And we will get an invitation on your calendar as soon as possible, but just wanted to let you know, same time, same place, just the third Tuesday instead of the second Tuesday.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Tony, for organizing everything. Thanks to all our presenters today, and thanks everyone for listening in. We'll see you next month.